Welcome back. The time is 8:48, and you're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salalo Makwidiri. And in a bit, I will be delving into a pivotal issue that has significantly impacted our nation. The July 2021 unrest. This period was of widespread violence and looting, and led to the loss of over 350 lives, and inflicted severe economic damages. And despite new reports from the South African Human Rights Commission and the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities, many questions remain unanswered about the root causes and accountability for these events. Joining us today is Heidi Swart. She's a research and advocacy coordinator at Intelwatch, and she'll be discussing with us, some of the lessons that we've learned, particularly when it comes to the state of South Africa's intelligence, that ultimately led to the July 2021 unrest. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Salam Media.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
3 years on, there's been so many reports and investigations about some of the root causes of the July unrest in 2021. But at the core of all of this, I think, is the state of South Africa's intelligence. What have we learned, from that period about the state of South Africa's intelligence, both private and government ran?
So, for one, I would say let's start with the government. This type of situation is something that our intelligence services should have foreseen, should have predicted, and they should have warned the public. If you look at our domestic intelligence services, the State Security Agency, part of their mandate is to monitor the domestic security situation. So, in other words, one of the things they are directly mandated in policy to keep an eye on is unrest, civil unrest. So their function really would have been to pick up on this and to let the public know and to let the police, the local police stations know, etc. That didn't quite happen. Now, we don't know why. We don't know if they didn't pick up on it or if there was a failure in communication within the organization. We'll never know because we didn't actually have a proper investigation into the agency that was made public. But what we do know is that the private intelligence sector most certainly saw the trouble coming. They probably did not estimate the extent of it, but they knew through monitoring social media and through agents on the ground what was coming. They knew that there would be unrest, significant unrest. And we also know for a fact that they warned the government that this was coming, that they went straight to the intelligence services and said this was going to happen. And in the end, they were ignored. So the government knew it was coming, and they were woefully unprepared. They could have done a lot better.
And you mentioned the private intelligence services, and how they saw this coming, but my thinking is, obviously there could have been some kind of communication with government to try and see if there could be any preventative measures that could be put in place. And this puts into question the relationship, between the private sector and government when it comes to intelligence. If you can shed light on that, and if it could have, in any case, exacerbated, the fact that there couldn't be any preventative measures for the July unrest, the state of the relationship between the two entities.
So the thing is, I think the private sector is very willing to help government. They have a mutual interest in keeping the place safe. What risk companies do is, remember, there's an entire corporate structure in South Africa. You have, big banks, insurance companies, etc. That they want to know what's happening in the country in terms of violence, unrest, instability, and so forth, because they need to protect their business assets. So the intelligence is there. The government, they can't get that intelligence from the government. So as with so many other parts of our security sector, I mean, we all see private security guards. There's a massive private security guard sector. So, as with all other security aspects, that has also uh, um, become privatized, right?
Mm,
So, whereas our police have got more of a working relationship with private security, I mean, you see it all over the show in neighborhood watches and so forth, working with private security, a good, strong relationship. We don't see that happening with our intelligence services. So there is a wealth of knowledge that they can tap into, and they do not. But why they don't is another question. We really don't know. Again, we don't know what's going on with our intelligence services. They simply do not tell us exactly what they're doing.
mm,
Um, and we still, again, I want to say it again, we need to have an inquiry, a proper inquiry into what went wrong with our security agency. So in a nutshell, the relationship is, I would say, on the part of private sector, they are very keen to work with the government. On the part on the government side, we see an inertia.
And do you think this could be the lack of of foresight from government's point of view? Do you think this could be, I don't know, honest human error, or it could have been a lack of resources? Is our intelligence equipped enough to kind of find out about what's happening on the ground and to try and put those preventative measures into place, or they are not equipped like many other state agencies are?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We know that during Zuma's tenure, there was widespread cadre deployment. Uh, and at the time that he was president, that entire, the State Security Agency in particular, was repurposed for factional battles. That's come out in formal commissions. Uh, so the problem there is that if you have an agency that is not being deployed for what it's supposed to be deployed for, and it gets run down over almost a decade, or at
Mm,
least two presidential terms. That you'll end up with an agency that lacks technical capacity, and by technical capacity, for example, you have to be able to monitor social media to catch these kinds of things. It's not the only source of information, but WhatsApp, Facebook, all those things are really great. They're actually becoming critical in keeping an eye on ground events. So that, for example, is something that is a capacity that they didn't have. And even back then, the police crime intelligence, who are also partly responsible for this, they also didn't have the capacity, and they admitted it. So there's that technical capacity, but also there has to be political will in the organization to to deal with a big event like the July unrest. I mean, it would have taken a proper prep. Would have taken at least 3 months. They had to really step back and make sure they had their ducks in a row. But if you have such a dysfunctional state intelligence apparatus, that's not going to happen, because you may have some people in there who really want to do the job, and then you have other people who are really just there for the salary or for the kickbacks or whatever.
mm.
So, and again, we need to see the incident investigated so that we can see where this went wrong.
Mm. Well, it's been 3 years on, and it doesn't look like the instigators of the July unrest are anywhere, close to being found. How confident are you that the instigators, the main people, not the normal men and women who are just taking advantage of what was happening, but the people who are at the core in the planning and execution of this, riots and unrest are ultimately, found, and they are put behind bars for their actions?
Not very. I mean, we saw the MPA already. Because it's been more than a year where the MPA said, "Look, sorry, we can't find proof that it's been instigated." One analyst I spoke to had a very nice way of explaining it. When I asked about the MPA saying, "Sorry, we don't have proof,"
Mm,
uh, and the description was, look, it's like seeing a dead body in the road, okay? And you can see that the person's been shot. But because you don't know who did it or what the circumstances were, you walk away and you say, well, sorry, we can't prove anything. So there are definite external signs. And when you do intelligence analysis, this is oddly, you always look at what you can actually see. So analysts will tell you, look, we can see this was instigated. Someone lit a match somewhere. People got swept up into the riots, and then it reached the type of critical mass where even ordinary people were busy stealing food, right? But somebody did light the match, and but our prosecutors are not going to go after that because it's very well, to my mind, I don't think so, because it's so difficult to trace it back to who actually started the instigation. And then the other aspect is, once you find that person, how exactly, unless you have records of how this instigation occurred, unless you have proper, evidence, how are you going to actually, in the end, prosecute them? It's a very slippery thing. I mean, we see now in the United States, they're very struggling to even, indict Donald Trump because
Mm.
of his instigatory utterances before the January 6th riots. So you have to find out who did it, then you have to find the evidence of how they did it, and then you have to actually show that they were at least partly responsible for getting this entire riot going. I'm not so sure that our government has the resources to do that. So to answer your question in a nutshell, I wouldn't hold my breath that the people who started this will be found.
Mm-hmm. And just lastly, has the government learned its lesson? Are there measures now in place to try and mitigate if anything that resembles the July unrest was to happen again? I think there were fears, especially after the elections, and how they panned out that there might be some kind of post-election violence. You had the MK coming out with all kinds of comments, about them. If there's no recount there, the country might burn down again, or those kind of things. Do you think there are measures in place now, considering that July 2021 happened, and the government must have surely learned their lessons and kind of have preventative measures in place to mitigate anything that resembles that happening ever again?
So what we saw with the election is that the police, crime intelligence, and the military, SANDF's intelligence. The police made a public statement saying that they have the SANDF troops on the ground, the policemen are on the ground, and that they have their own intelligence, human intelligence agents deployed on the ground, and that they know what's happening, and that they're keeping an eye on things. And of course, they were there to keep the peace during the election. And I think I can't say for sure that was directly a result of what they learned in the riots, but certainly it was an improvement upon what was happening in 2021. So they were there with a presence, and they announced openly that they knew what was cooking because they had intelligence operations going. So from that perspective, that's a very positive development. But again, that's police crime intelligence, and that's also our military. We didn't see anything. Well, I didn't see anything, that was similar coming from the State Security Agency, and I'm pretty sure I would have spotted it. So yes, we see that there is definitely a move to try and improve their reaction to this sort of thing. But with the SSA, State Security Agency, we're still not sure, what changes they have made. It's just, everything is cloak and dagger there. The whether or not they're actually prepared for this sort of thing, I think they could, if they address this kind of wave of violence quickly enough, if they could stop initial looting, and if they could, to some extent, counter the misinformation or the spread of the instigation, that might stop it. Whether or not they've really got the resources to do this, if it were to happen again, I can't tell you that, but I would be a bit worried.
I think we're going to leave it there, Heidi. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your insights while we're reflecting on the 3 years on since the July unrest. I'm sure if there are any new developments, if any major arrests are made, I will definitely be chatting to you just to unpack it a bit further. But we're going to leave it here for now. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That was Heidi Swart, research and coordinator at Intelwatch, reflecting on 3 years since the July unrest and focusing particularly on the state of South Africa's intelligence and our police. And as Heidi puts it there, well, they dropped the ball well, taking into consideration the elections and there not being any kind of spike in violence or unrest, maybe, just maybe, the government has possibly learned their lesson. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with the second hour of news and views. Keep it logged in on Salam Media. We'll see you right after this.